Welcome, everybody, to The Love of Cars, presented by Hagerty. I'm Justin Bell, and this is Tommy Kendall. And yes, this is an interesting, very exciting evolution of our popular talk show series. Normally, of course, associated with the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, for good reason, because we're racers. Spent most of our lives in and around racing cars. And when speaking for myself, when my racing career slowed down a bit, Tommy, I got into the TV thing. Imagine you drive around in circles and then you actually get to talk about it. Nothing better. And I love that. But right at the end there, I think we saw a shining light, didn't we?
Well, they don't let you drive them forever, and so that we transition to the next thing. But when you cover it for TV, it's such a narrow sliver of what's going on at the racetrack. It's such a rich environment. We're like, more people need to see this. And so the drama, the rivalry, the richness, the sexiness, the characters is how we decided to launch the Torque Show. And then during how do you quarantine? What do you do during quarantine? You get creative. And so we're like, that's only a very narrow what happens
in the
bit of broader car world.
Yeah.
And so the love of cars is about as broad as they get. But what I love about the love of cars in the car world is I'm not sure there's anything that touches every part of society like cars does. And you have people that love them for so many different reasons, from every income group, demographic, nationality, ethnicity, everything. And unified, it's like the center of the spoke, the hub of the wheel, and so we're like, let's delve into that.
And of course, when it comes to looking at how you build a new show like this, you think, well, who could you partner with? How can you get in with the right people? And I've got to say, I know I'm coming back to that.
Okay.
I'm coming back to that. I realized I just kind of did one of those.
Yes, you did.
But I was realizing you're seeing Hagerty behind us here, and if I really had my dream list of what kind of a brand, what kind of a family company you could have as your partner in a collaboration like this to showcase the passion, the lifestyle behind the love of cars, it would be Hagerty. So I'm incredibly excited about that. We'll tell you more about that in a minute. But one of the things we thought of was, in our world, as we look at the travel we do, the people we come across, you say there's no barriers to the car world, the passion for cars and the people around it. What's the first thing you do when you get a little bit of money, when you have any measure of success, wherever you draw that line? Normally, you should probably be buying a house, but for most of us, it's getting the car of our dreams, again, whatever that is at the time. And it got us to thinking, what is that car? For everybody, there's normally that car that kicks off that passion and kicks off your lifetime. For us, a very expensive racing career. Thankfully, someone else paid for it most of the time. But it really kicks things off, doesn't it? And what was that car? What was your that car moment?
Well, I mean, long before you own a car, you think about them and dream of them. Now, this one came along later in my life, but the car that it will be the last possession I own is my beloved chicken car, El Gallo, which is a 73 Olds 98 with a look at that beautiful rooster head and tail on it. And I've had it for 23 years now. Everybody asks me why, and it's so funny, the question never entered my mind. It was, why not? But we have been on so many adventures, and everyone is different. They're all fun. And so that one, for me, someone offered to buy it. People offer to buy it all the time. A really wealthy guy offered. I told him $1 million. He says, "You're crazy." I said, "There's only one of them, and that's the price." Since then, I'm like, I wouldn't sell it for $10 million today. My wife would probably get mad at me. How do you sell a family member, a best friend?
True, and you're so similar. I mean, I've got to tell you, when I see that photograph, so many things come to mind. I cannot even say them on this show.
What about you? What is that car for you?
Well, you did point it out earlier. I kind of was birthed into racing, so I was a little spoilt. We had a 956 in our garage at home growing up, but this is Dad's Porsche 924 Carrera GTS, and she is so beautiful. When he first started racing for Porsche, and this is back in I think the late 70s, beginning of the 80s rather, Porsche were assembling their dream team, their super team of Hans Stuck, Jack Hicks, Jochen Mass, Dad, Vern Schuppen, all these incredible drivers to ultimately race the 956. They didn't know that was coming. They were assembling these drivers, and this was the road-going version of the car they raced at Le Mans. And my mum...
That's your house, I'm assuming.
It's Poolshed. No, it's Blenheim Palace actually. But Dad sent me lots of them, and this is far grander than our house. But it's so beautiful. And when I was 15, and this is the real reason I love this car. When I was 15, Dad said, "Son, this is JB. This is going to be yours one day." Now he's getting older. Apparently, he's forgotten that. But I have it on.
Still own it?
We still own it right now. We drive it every time we go back to England. Anyway, that was that car for me because I suddenly connected the world of racing to road cars, and I think that's really a motivator for us all. Passion for cars, the lifestyle around them, the energy, the culture, the way it shapes our lives is very much the subject of this show. You'll notice we have a slightly different pace to this. We're not bringing on frantic, over-revving drivers. We're bringing on some of the most interesting and influential people in the car world, and I promise you that will run the full gamut between designers to entertainers to athletes to basically builders, everybody.
Some are obvious that are known for their love of cars, and others are people that you know but don't know they love cars. And so we're going to try to bring all those together and dig into what it was about cars that does it for them.
As I said, Hagerty is the brand that really puts it all together. And when the lockdown started to happen, almost instantly, I don't know how they did it, especially as we understand production, they turned around this little video which they put out across social media, across the web, and it was meant to really inspire and educate and just give people that message that there is a little shining light coming up in the very near future. So before we meet McKeel Hagerty, CEO of Hagerty itself, enjoy this video.
As communities across the nation have enacted local shelter-in-place orders, we must do our part by staying home. When we return, we'll take a look at the forecast for next week.
McKeel, nice to see you. How are you?
Great to be here, guys. Every time I see that video, I knew we nailed it. We needed that little bit of hope out there because everybody's just, wondering what's going to happen next. So that what a great opportunity to showcase just that core idea that, it's cars and people, and that's what this really is all about.
And that's
Gave
really
me goosebumps as he said that.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, that was what I kept on saying on every one of these bloody Zoom things we go on with meetings and brands the whole time. I'm like, believe me, the minute we go back, you're going to see unparalleled crowds. You're going to see enthusiasm. Who's going to sit on their sofa and say, I can't be bothered to go to Cars and Coffee? Certainly none of our followers and none of your family, I'm sure. So how are you, McKeel? How are you through the middle of all this?
Oh, thank you. My family is healthy and we've been able to work from home. I think the first effort for us, we have 1,300 employees in all the different Hagerty businesses, which are all around, our love of the automobile. And we have this purpose of saving driving and car culture for future generations. That's the purpose of our business. But we knew we had to first secure the business, make people feel safe. So, we got 900 people working from home within about 4 days and just, tried to get everything secure. And so far, so good. But we're planning for an even brighter future, knowing that it'll be different. And maybe we can talk about how it'll be different a little bit, we think. The weirdest pivot for us in the car world, and, is that I'm not going to get to see you guys at an event anytime soon, is that, for the rest of the summer, there's just not going to be any large events. I think there will be driving events. I know I can't wait to get out on the road with some buddies, safely following or leading. Maybe that's my better spot.
Leading.
But it's just going to be different, that we're going to have to go through a year of the car world where we can't share together in the same way we were before. So that's a little weird, but that's why we're doing things like this with you guys, is that we can all share the love of the car together, even if we have to be apart.
Now, you said when you saw that spot, you knew you'd nailed it. It doesn't surprise me. Jay Leno and a lot of us, we work our lives so we can enjoy the cars we love. your whole life has been built around the cars from the start. So it doesn't surprise me that someone who's immersed themselves, built their life around cars and figured out a way to make a living at it would understand, what chords to hit and so forth. How did it start for you?
Well, I grew up in a car collecting family, not a racing family. And my dad wasn't into sports and anything else. So if you wanted to get to know Dad, you were in the garage working with him on cars. But I have 2 older sisters, and even they, who it was a little different generation. When they were 12, 13 years old, he helped them get a car, and they each restored their car in the garage, and I did too. And I bought it when I was 13, this 67 Porsche 911S. And so I'm a Porsche guy from, when a little tot, and found this 67S in a snowbank in northern Michigan. I paid $500 for it.
Wow.
And I had great hair, which
I was going to say, well, at least you could keep the car.
Yeah, the hair was history. But it was amazing that, you think about it. I mean, of course, all I really wanted was to be James Bond, but there weren't any DB5 Aston Martins sitting around. So, this little air-cooled 911 would have to do. And that's the car I drove to high school. And it just, our identities came together with it. Tommy said, like, this is the last possession I will ever have. Or when people ask me, like, what it's worth, I'm like, I don't care. It's worth everything. It's worth $500 and everything to me, because it's become my passion. It's become my life. And, it's not a bad thing that my very first car was a 67S.
No, so. It's a pretty nice place. Mine was a VW Golf that I put into I put it into probably not the same snowbank, but like a snowbank. I was trying to combine a new girlfriend and my driving license at the same journey home from school, and I ran out of talent on both, handling both, and put it into the wall. We haven't said thank you yet for coming on board and being a part of this. It was 2 weeks ago, for everyone watching, that I emailed McKeel and said, hey, listen, I got this idea for a show. We want to extend our talk show brand, and we want to do a lifestyle automotive show. And within one email, we were on a loop with all his amazing team, and it's up and running. We're excited about it, but also we really do believe in the relevance of a show that brings across the passion for the automobile, the community, especially right now, as you said, we're in a virtual community. How do you think we're going to come out the other end of this we're going to be stronger, I believe, right? Our community, our virtual community, will lead to an even more bonded physical one. What's your take on that?
I think that's right. I think that I'm seeing great humanity in all of this, and it's hard to weed through the science, and it's hard to figure out like what's all right and what's wrong. But I know that, the passion for cars is something that has endured many, many challenges through the years. I remember during the financial crisis a decade ago, when the world felt like it was melting down there for a short period of time. And what we realized is that, people were looking forward to the other side of it just to enjoy their cars. And I know car guys right now that are, they're tinkering away on things that they didn't think they could get done this winter to get their cars ready for spring. They're thinking about those first drives that they want to take. And just like the simple pleasure of starting the car up and taking it around the block is like, it's almost making us appreciate them more. Yeah. And I know it's not for everybody. Look, we're a weird crowd a little bit, but for those of us who get it, the people watching right now who get it, you know what I mean? Like, I think there could actually be a deeper appreciation, and our job, because of this purpose, we've defined for ourselves, is let's just make it better. Let's make it better. If big events can't happen for a while, then let's make great small ones. If tours are the only way that with cars 6 feet apart or whatever, then let's do that together. We will get through this, and if we got to get through it by creating great content with total pros like you guys, if we're going to up our game on the print side of our media business, if we're going to do different things, like, I'm not here to make excuses. I'm here to get stuff done. Yeah. And I can't get stuff done if we don't move forward. So I took one big breath. I got my team on board, and we're just going for it. And by the way, I just want to congratulate you guys. You got me to wear pants for the first time in 6 weeks or so.
And I wouldn't have asked for proof of that either.
We had to, because it's a glass top table.
Yeah, it is. We had to for the first time.
I noticed.
you talk about your print. Let's quickly mention that. I believe you're almost the third largest, it said on the press release, which means you're
So our
approaching the
magazine,
podium.
Yeah, thank you. The Hagerty Drivers Club magazine. So that goes to our members. I think we passed Road and Track, or we've just about passed Road and Track and audited Circ this year. So, this is a fabulous magazine put together by some of the best automotive media folks in the business, from almost anywhere. And it focuses on all the different dimensions of the, we call it generally the enthusiast automotive space. So it's not just show and shine cars. We're into driving. We believe cars need to be driven. We like cars that are driven. So we'll span everything from pre-war cars to, a little bit of modern supercar stuff to even, different enthusiast cars, getting more into motorsports.
Yeah.
We think that there's actually more room for us to help out some of the great different communities within the motorsports world to tie them together in a bigger way. We just, we're kind of bullish on how we can knit millions of people together around the car world where other business models may not be as workable anymore. It really works for us. So we're just having a blast because we get to produce high quality stuff. Hundreds of thousands of people are coming to us new every year. And, we get to do fun stuff like this show. So
We like that.
Now, so it only goes to your Drivers Club members. It's not on newsstands. So that kind of a circulation, audited circulation, just by people that have basically sought you out and said, I want to be part of this.
Yeah, it's like a subscription fee, but you get other stuff and access to discounts and some of our events that we're starting to do, our touring series, once that fires back up. And we're going to keep adding to it because our scale now allows us to do things that doesn't work. And because we don't have to live solely by a subscription or an advertising model, we just decided what would be the greatest car magazine we could make if we were making it for ourselves. And, I had this very high bar that I first said, like, don't let it suck. So I know it doesn't suck. And then I said, okay, well, it doesn't suck. Let's make it really great.
Yeah.
And so we're going to do that. We're doing, we also have a lot of our kind of digital properties and valuation tools and all the stuff that we do out there for the car world, because no one has ever been able to knit so many car lovers together in the same way before. And that's really our idea, is build the world's biggest car community, because I realized we're not going to save driving for future generations by just hoping it'll happen, by wishing for it. We're going to have to create a big organization to do it with a lot of different pieces. Yeah. And because, otherwise it runs the risk of just kind of fragmenting, like a typical car club would, or a media organization typically would. So
it's funny. I was, one of the things that you and I come across when we're at the racetracks, and this is what we really miss right now, McKeel. Obviously, we're at our friend's Fusion Motor Company in Chatsworth in Los Angeles, and wonderful cars around us, Ford GTs and SLRs, and we're surrounded by these beautiful cars, but the people are missing. And that, I think, is what is resonating most with us. We're obviously engaging with everybody through our shows, but when we take Betty the Airstream and we're in the middle of the IMSA paddock, we see, literally, it's a kaleidoscope of the generational enjoyment and potential for motorsports and the car. And we see grandfathers and grandmothers with their kids, and then you see the dad who always goes to Road America, who then brings his young kid, and maybe they only want to get some cool stickers at the first time and hear and see certainly they always like seeing the Ford GT or something. But we have really grown to I think, be totally dedicated to connecting the dot to that young person, because we know we represent one generation, and as someone said to me really well yesterday, we're young enough to be relevant, but old enough to understand. And I think that's a good way of putting it. And the younger generation are so key for us to get them involved in motorsports, to get them involved in how these beautiful cars are made. Certainly historic cars play a role, and classic cars, because you can work on them. And next week we have one of the biggest builders in the business coming on the show, Rod Emery. What's your position on that? How does Hagerty get involved in making the young people care? Because there's a lot of options for them.
Well, the big thing is make sure that we're always kind of lowering the bar of entry for them, because, when you talk to a lot of even just younger people who aren't like children, but younger people who are into cars, and their fear is just, well, I can't afford it. And so, helping them get access to cool cars, and then, just giving them a thumbs up, even when it's not the ultimate great, perfect car, and telling them, hey man, it's cool. Because trust me, they want to go up the ladder too. They want a 67S, they want a Shelby, they want that, that Porsche that, you'll someday be lucky enough to get there, Justin, hopefully,
Yeah,
if your
I know.
dad remembers. But is they know they want that, but they got to start somewhere. So for us, it's always been, we do start young. We do hundreds of youth judging programs around the country and around the world now, where at a car show, we just run a youth judging program, let kids sit in cars, honk the horns, touch them. And we just tell people, like, it's okay if they get fingerprints on the car. Like, you can wipe them off. And by the way, the number of times I get, letters from the parents saying, you made his or her year, like, now all they want to do is go into the car world. So lower the bar, make it easy to get to, make it accessible, and kind of, I'm trying to remove the velvet ropes from around some cars. I get it. Some cars are very valuable. We know that very, very well, but we need to make them accessible. And then just create great paths of entry. If somebody wants to start in the off-roading world and they really want to go racing on the track, or if they want to start in a motorcycle and they want to get into showing cars or modifying cars, like, I don't care. I say thumbs up and welcome to the club.
Well, I think there's also, you said we're a weird little bunch that loves cars. That all started from zero awareness at one point, and it might have just been if you wanted to get to know Dad, you needed to be in the garage with Dad, or or someone that says, I had no interest in cars, and I was dating this guy, and then I didn't like him, but I love the car events we went to, and so I think you kind of bump up it a few times, and then some people get drawn in, and some people it's not for them. But one thing that you said, where you seem to be guided, it reminds me of Google, where 20% of their time was their own to pursue any sort of technology. And you seem to say, if this is interesting, we're going to be involved in it. And we'll figure out how to make sense of it later, which is a cool way to do it. So I think there's a real opportunity for the casual. I think there's a whole bunch of latent potential car lovers that just need to get activated. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, our statistics would indicate now in the U.S. that there's something like 75 to 80 million people who would identify themselves as a casual car enthusiast. Wow. Doesn't mean they own a car that they're super proud of, but they would say, hey, look, and I'm an enthusiast. I don't own anything right now very special, but I like cars. When we look at, like, just even the vintage car world, you start getting up into 19, 20, 25 million vehicles out there pre-1982 that are still registered, still out there. Sure, some of them are probably just kind of junk or cheap transportation. But a lot of them, it's in some way a special car for people. And, our job isn't to judge, it's to welcome and to, kind of wrap our arms around people and make them feel comfortable. And, that's one of the reasons why I like Cars and Coffee when, we talk about the car events that have become so popular, because, you might have a blower Bentley sitting next to a pickup truck that, of an odd color combination. And you just kind of say, okay, well, we're together, we get it. And then if you want to go to Pebble Beach, go to Pebble Beach. But, Pebble Beach isn't happening this year. So we're going to enjoy the love of cars from afar for a while. And I just can't wait to get out and drive.
Talk about that. Pebble Beach not being on, it makes you appreciate. Amelia was, I didn't go this year because I thought I had a full plate all summer. And I was like, I've been the last 3 years, Bill Warner lays on one of the best events in the world. I presume you were there. My father was there. I know everybody who was anybody was there, and I think they're all looking back going, thank goodness. Well, little did we know that was going to be the last.
It was a matter of days, because March 12th is when the world changed. Yeah. March 11th, basically.
Yeah, and pretty much when I was halfway across the country with this, almost on the way to Sebring. Almost on the way to Sebring. Those massive events, Pebble Beach, I spoke to Sandra last week, Sandra Button, who is the head of it all up there for Pebble Beach Company. And it's you realize when you talk to people, it's not just the business loss opportunity. They realize they're creating these beacons for everybody of hope and enjoyment and aspiration. We're missing that right now, which again leads us back to why I think the message from us and from Hagerty is so important. What do you think the landscape will be like when we come back? What do you think those big events will be like? I think we're going to be mad for them, but Your opinion?
Yeah, well, I think until, this idea of kind of risk and trust is readjusted, we won't know how big they are or how many people can show up to them in an acceptable way. We do have a pretty big effort going on in the vintage and amateur motorsports world. We own a company called Motorsport Reg, which they handle something like 60% of all the registrations at recreational and amateur racing programs and races around the country. The first thought for them is that people want to go racing, but you're not going to go any place with a big gate, lots of vendors, that sort of thing. The race can still happen, but it's going to be a pretty quiet affair. I think a concours or other kind of shows without a lot of people would be strange. Could you do an auction where the cars show up but the people don't, and you bid virtually? I mean, those are some of the hypotheses that we're having for the next few months. So this isn't going to go on forever until the idea of risk is readjusted, because I'm not sure what event right now, even if you could get a permit to do one in what state, would feel comfortable doing it. And so our view is, let's just go small. Let's accept the fact that things are going to be small or kind of private for a while, and the world will come back. I mean, you think of Pebble Beach, it's kind of like our Kentucky Derby. I used to say Super Bowl. It's really more like our Kentucky Derby, because, the Kentucky Derby, I'm not that big into horse racing, but you kind of know when it is, and there's kind of the pageantry of it, and people get dressed up and they have parties and all that kind of thing. And it will be back. It may be a little different. I just knew a lot of even exhibitors, typical people who show, who are like, I'm not standing on a field with 20,000 people right now. I'm going to wait and see how this works out. So prudence is fine. And guess what? We're going to let some of the restorers get caught up with projects that they've been sitting on. A lot of people are, actually spending more time prepping cars than they ever were before. It's just going to be a little strange. Now, will there be anything yet this fall? It's just too soon to say. We own the Greenwich Concours, which was going to be in late May. We had to cancel that. We thought about pushing it into September, and it just felt, I kept seeing all these different events. I think every NASCAR race is going to run in like 2 weeks, right, for the season. Exactly. So it's just going to be a very different year. And our view is, stay positive, stay optimistic, do the right things, and just get ready for what the next phase looks like for all of us.
I will mention something you're involved in, I got involved in. There is the Isolation Island Concours d'Elegance on Facebook that Andy Reid, who's an expert, a judge at a lot of the shows, it's for model cars.
No
and
way.
They're going, and McKeel is the chief judge, but I judged with David Hobbs and Bill Warner the Sterling Moss class last week, and then I also judged the race car class, and they've had 2 of them so far. They're going to do them every 2 or 3 weeks, I think. And so talk about accessibility. Anyone who has a model car can enter. You do a description, the presentation, and much like the real Concours world, it's about the quality of the model. It's about the presentation. Some of the photography is unbelievable.
Wow.
It's telling the story. Some of them are about the car they represent, and some are about the model. One model was built 45 years ago by this major collector, and this other guy had inherited the model from the person, so the model actually had a provenance. So that's something that will happen between now and then, and think people are getting creative with stuff like that.
I'm glad you got selected to judge something miniature.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one day you'll graduate to the big class. We have a question here from our online audience. I bet you wish you had a crystal ball more than once over the last 30, 40 years. But Jeremy McLean on Instagram asked, where do you see our classic cars being 50 to 100 years from now? I guess that means, what do you think the classics are going to be in 50, 100 years?
Well, I mean, there's no doubt about it that, we're almost in a new golden age of great enthusiasts in sport cars right now, right? Just the cars that are being built today, you think of I'm a Porsche guy, so I just reference point, a GT3 RS or something like that. I mean, my God, the day it was built, it's just an epic world-class car. Hard to imagine it just kind of going away. So you think of the great cars from the past, you think of some of these really excellent cars that are being built today. Yes, there was kind of a period in the 70s and 80s when not as many people found cars as appealing, and yet they're rabid fans of, big 70s interesting cars, almost the gaudier the better in some cases, 80s sports cars. So, what we're seeing is that, Henry Ford did not make the horse go extinct, right? Henry Ford and all of his peers just took them out of daily transportation. And that's what happened. So there's still horse racing, there's horse jumping, there are dude ranches, there's all sorts of places to see horses. They're just not used every day for daily transportation. And so our view is, like, if you could go back 120 years ago and know that what's would happen, and you were into horses, wouldn't you have done something different? Wouldn't you have bought up, maybe you would have the place out near the mountains with a barn and a carriage house or whatever, and that you could go drive your cars, because you now have rapid urbanization in a lot of places, like in the US. There's kind of these wide open spaces that are just waiting for people to drive in. I think there will be a lot more private tracks. I think you're still going to see, racing in different environments. So I'm actually optimistic about the long-term future. I'm not worried about it. Like horse racing, it might go up market a little bit. So, are you going to see lots of $5,000 cars 50 and 100 years from now? Probably not. They'll be a little bit more valuable, but that's okay. I'm optimistic about it, and I intend to be part of seeing that happen as long as I live.
Cryogenic freezing.
Since we're an interactive show, why don't we put this question out to the viewers that are? Why don't you tell us what you think a car today? And it's easy. If you're 16, the car you're obsessing over today will probably be worth a ton.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, and one car, I drove a Nissan Gtr for a year. I have never had young people react to. I've driven some more expensive cars than that.
They loved it.
This one kid, I was going through a drive-through at McDonald's, and the guy was taking the money from the person here, and he's hanging out the window, and he's yelling, "Rev it! Rev it!" I thought he was going to get fired. And so that's a car, I feel safe to say, Nissan Gtr Future Classic. So tell us what you think the cars that maybe aren't obvious, like a McLaren P1, obvious. There's not a lot of them. But tell us an obscure one you think is going to be and weigh in on the forums.
I wonder. Yeah. Oh, you weren't asking him. That was so well done.
I wasn't asking him.
Well, let's McKeel, we are so glad you came on the show. It was thank you for this partnership. But I really wanted you to stay on the line just for a few minutes, because talk about year models that are now really worth a lot more they were when they started out. Sometimes the patina, a little more patina. Maybe the bodywork, there's some stuffing showing out of the seats. But our next guest, the one and only Jay Leno, is 70 years old today. So happy birthday, Jay! I hope you're there. Come and say hi to us. Hopefully, he is there. He should be somewhere down below.
Our favorite 1950 model.
Is that really true? 50. Oh yeah, 1950. That's true.
Math's hard.
Waiting to see. Hold on 1 second. We're going to throw to a clip. I should have read that. Throw to this clip.
I woke up this morning with that familiar feeling in my tummy, like, something's happening today. There's a sort of climax of competition that happens, and it really is. We've got to, sorry.
Now, is this suit from the world of racing? It looks like from the world of
dog racing,
the world of hucksterism. Yeah, step right up, ladies and gentlemen. Please buy a bottle of Dr. Good right here.
Well,
it's a fantastic suit.
Well, I got you on stage, didn't I, Jay? There you are.
Yes, I love that suit. As you see, all my money went into the vehicles. I did not spend a dime on clothing, as you can see. But you could get...
He has a suit collection, not a car collection.
I do have a suit collection, not a car collection.
That is, yeah.
That I, against my own better judgment, showed that clip was because Jay, I've worked with him for quite a while, and he's always a hoot, but as you can tell, has huge respect for me.
Obviously.
You can tell that, and the way I dress. So hopefully Jay will be coming on in a minute. But McKeel, you're still there. I think if we can just pop you back up on the screen.
There he is. I think we have Jay with us now. We're getting
there he is. He's sideways.
Oh. Hopefully whehoever's holding the phone will flip it.
If we actually go there he is.
Oh,
no, he's upside down.
Hang on. There we
Jay.
go.
There he is.
That it?
That's it.
Happy
Perfect.
birthday, Jay.
Thank you, gentlemen. I thought I heard you mocking my clothing a minute ago.
Well, it's only jealousy because life would be simpler if we had a car collection instead of a clothes collection.
But see, these are my clothes. My cars are my clothes. I just cover what I have to legally so I don't get arrested.
Well, it's nice that you're sitting next to something older than yourself, which is obviously for a point of reference. Do you feel special today?
No, not at all, actually. It's just another day. But I always feel like when I come on a show like this, it's a car show, so you want to bring something interesting. And this is a car I don't think many people are familiar with. Of course, McKeel has insured this car, so he knows what it is. This is what's called a Wills Sinclair. These are really, really rare. And from the outside, it looks like just about any car from the 20s, traditional styling, handsome, but not outrageous. This is a classic case of the really interesting part is under the hood. And it's what makes this car so fascinating, because most cars of this period would be a flathead four-cylinder like a Model T. I should explain who C. Howard Wills was. C. Howard Wills was Henry Ford's metallurgist, chief machinist. He was the genius behind the Model T. He designed the planetary transmission, which was pretty revolutionary back in the day. Vanadium steel was his. He invented the I'm dyslexic. I can't see the how would you say it? Kind of steel that most crankshafts and things are made out of today. A real genius, invented the steel beam headlight, and he worked for Ford. He was also a graphic designer, and he designed the Ford logo, you know, the blue oval, which they still use today. Anyway, he and Henry Ford, and like everybody worked with Ford, got in a big fight. Ford was pretty stubborn, and he quit and decided to build his own car. And he built a car called the Wills Sinclair. And as simple as the Model T was, this was completely the opposite. Overhead cam, V8, bevel drive, no fan belts. The fan is run on oil pressure. The oil pressure spins the fan. The fan declutches at 40 miles per hour to allow more horsepower to go into the motor. Let me just open the hood on this thing and see if you guys get a little look at it. It's one of the prettiest engines. Extremely complicated. It's essentially two four-cylinder engines put together. In fact, if one bank goes dead, you can drive home on the other. As you can see, there's no belts, there's no chains, helical drive. This is it's derivative of the Hispano-Suiza aero engine built by Mark Burkett to the First World War. You see, here's the overhead cam here. Here's the bevel drive. It's the very sophisticated automobile, all kinds of fascinating ideas. First car to have a reverse backup light, a few other little trick things like that. So I always figure when I'm talking to McKeel, I want to have something interesting to show him. And I think this is a pretty fascinating piece of automotive history. I think only about 30 or 40 of these V8s are left. The engine was so expensive to build and so complex that, see, the head does not detach.
Wow.
You got to take the whole engine apart to get to the valves. It's like going to the proctologist for dental work. You've got to come in through the bottom of the whole thing. So it's a fascinating piece of American kit. You know, we always think the Europeans are so far ahead of us in the 20s and 30s. And this is an example that, no, we were doing the same things they were doing, in some cases better. This was an overhead cam V8 designed in 1920, came out in 1921, 1922. So,
wow, how fantastic.
But I figured I'd throw it anyway.
Now, before we let McKeel go, McKeel, obviously you spent a lot of time with Jay. Is there a car of his, answer this anyway, is there a car of his that you particularly like, or what is it? I mean, just listen to Jay talk about that one car. He's like a historian. What is it about Jay that strikes you, or one of his cars that really gets you going?
Well, what I love about Jay's collection is how eclectic it is. And Jay has just dedicated himself. Like, you know, you hear him talking about this Wills Sinclair, to take on projects that some people might forget or decide it's too complicated to deal with, or maybe not try to take it on. And, you know, and what I love about talking to Jay about each of these cars is, you know, he recognizes that there was real genius in a lot of them, even if they seem a little odd, because these were all in many cases, just inventor geniuses trying to solve some of the same problems, trying to make better cars, trying to make them go faster, trying to give them more power. And so Jay's collection is so incredibly eclectic. There's like a twinkle in the eye to a lot of the stuff that he has and he's done. It's such a pleasure to be there. I've been able to see the collection a number of times, and there's always some big surprise in it.
Always.
Well, to me, the cool thing is certain periods of history. You had that time when Beethoven, Brahms, all these great composers suddenly appeared, and then they disappeared. And then at the turn of the century, you had Henry Ford, you had Edison, you had Tesla, you had C. Harold Wills, you had Lanchester, you had all these geniuses. And then in our own lifetimes, we've seen Bill Gates and Wozniak and Steve Jobs it's funny how it works. The 20th century was the mechanical age, and you had literally mechanical geniuses. And then all of a sudden we hit the electronic age, and like I said, with Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, and you have these electronic geniuses. And it's just funny how certain periods of history produce certain types of genius.
Wow. McKeel, thank you so much. I know you've got to get on. The empire won't build itself. And he's going to stay relevant because he's going to be appearing on Twitch very soon. I have no doubt.
There we go.
I'm joking. Then you'll know it's the end of the road.
So, hey, Jay, happy birthday. Thanks for being here with us.
Hey, thanks for letting me talk to you guys. See you soon.
No, you're staying with us, Jay.
Oh, I am?
Yeah.
Oh, no stuff. Lucky me.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, lucky you.
Bye, McKeel.
You know, it's funny, Jay, you talk about that technology because at Pebble Beach this year, Sandra and I had talked about down on the field, which would be a really fun feature for everybody, would be to talk about technology through the decades. And often that's something that gets glossed over, especially for young kids. They don't realize these cars were mind-blowingly inventive for their time. That would have been a great feature, don't you? Because kids these days do like to know how things work in a world where it's almost too complicated to know how things work. I bet kids all the time like your steam cars, they love seeing them, don't they?
Yeah, well, the fascinating part is the technology we have now, in certain cases, we've always had, but we didn't have the metallurgy of the science to back it up. I mean, we always knew that overhead valves were more efficient and faster than flathead, but flatheads were reliable, they didn't leak. So we stayed with the flathead because it was reliable and dependable. Overhead valves, you had push rods, you had metallurgy that could break. If it revved too high, it would snap. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, there was a movie called Redline 7000 that came out where James Conner driving a stock car, and you see the tacho 68, 67,000, and the car's going to blow up, Well, now 7,000 RPM improved, you get that in a 250cc motorcycle like that. So it's amazing how quickly it moves, and it's fun to watch that arc.
Now, Jay, everybody knows you now as the car guy. You had your incredible career in entertainment, which helped expand your car. Go back to the beginning of your car love. Was it the mechanics of it that drew you in? Was it McKeel who wanted to get to know his dad better, so he spent time in the garage? What drew you in first? Was it the mechanical side?
I grew up in New England, and it was a rural area, and there were always broken snowmobiles or lawnmowers or go-karts. I remember when we were kids, we found a Renault 2CV in a field. It had just been abandoned. And my dad came over and helped us get it going. We got it running. And we drove it. We had 3 acres of land in New England. We just drove around the backyard. Of course, nowadays, if you did that, they call child services. You'd be taken away in your parents' prison. But back in the day, my mother would sit out the kitchen window washing dishes, just watching us drive in circles when we were 12 and 13. Whenever we tipped over, she'd come running out, and then we'd get out and push the car up, and no, we're okay, Mom, and go drive around. And it was just a fun thing to do. You had to do things in reality. Now you do things virtually. That's sort of the difference. But it was fun just taking engines apart. I remember the first engine I took apart, my dad gave me a Briggs & Stratton engine, and it didn't run. And I took the head off, and I see why it didn't run, Pop. There's a piece of paper stuck in here, which of course was the head gasket. But I was like 9 or 10, so I took out that piece of paper, got some sandpaper, cleaned it all up, got all that gasket loose, put it back on, tried to start it, just gas and fumes just pouring out the side of it because there's no head gasket. And my father said, "What happened to this thing?" I said, "Well, there's a piece of paper stuck in it." He goes, "No, that was the head gasket." What's a head gasket? And he kind of had to go. He really pretty much started at the beginning.
Oh yeah. Well, we have a picture of this car. You could. This, I believe, is still in the collection now. But we're doing a segment on this. It's called For the Love of Cars. And one of the things, Jay, is what was that car? And when you showed me around the collection for the first time, definitely this is in that car category for you. It's a significant.
Can he see that on his?
I think he should. It's your father's car. It's the car you came to Hollywood with.
Oh no! Are you talking about the 7-liter Galaxy?
Yeah, no, it's the big Buick, isn't it? We've got there the.
Oh, my '55 Buick.
Yeah.
No, well, when I first came to Hollywood, I flew out here in the middle of the night. I landed at the airport. I went to the newsstand. I bought the penny saver, looking for cars. I saw a '55 Buick for $350, runs good. I called the guy up. I took a cab there, and I bought it because if I didn't buy it, I'd have to walk home from the guy's house. So I just assumed it would be good. You're a kid. You're so stupid. So I still have that car today, the '55 Buick. We put C5 Corvette suspension in it. We put larger wheels, wood disc brakes, big 572. In fact, the very first 572 Craig engine GM built, they gave to me, and we put it in that '55 Buick. It's got about 650 horsepower, and it moves good, especially for a '55 Buick.
Yeah, no doubt.
Well, for a guy that has warehouses full of cars now, there's always the next car on the list. Is there something you're looking for? Like, we're on lockdown now. You can't go rummaging through barn finds. You can't even go to Aerobooks and look at car books. What are you looking forward to embarking on? Either a road trip or what's the next project?
It isn't so much the car. I mean, it is a car if it's like a big block mid-'60s Corvette or something like that. But a lot of times you just buy the story. If a car has a great history, a great story that makes it interesting, if it's been well preserved and well taken care of. I mean, not long ago, well, I guess it's about 5 years ago now, I got a call from these two sisters. And their dad was a Korean War veteran. And when he came home from Korea, he bought a secondhand 50 Plymouth station wagon. And for like $50. And he spent his whole life restoring it, making it brand new. And when he died in his, I guess, late 80s, they didn't know what to do with the car. And they called me and they said, "If we donated to you, would you take care of it?" And I said, "Well, sure, tell me about your dad." Well, he was a Korean War veteran. So we made a donation to the Korean War Veterans Association. I think it's like $5,000, something like that. And in his name and in his honor, and they sent the two sisters a plaque. And we've got the car here, and all it is a 6-cylinder, flathead, 3 on the tree, just what my dad would call a good old girl, just a nice car to drive. It's the perfect car to drive when there's this pandemic thing going on. Because if you're turned up and down the street in a Lamborghini Aventador with open pipes, some deposed dictator's idiot son, people are going to throw rocks and chase you. But when you drive a 50 Plymouth Suburban all-metal station wagon, 3 on the tree, people wave and they smile. And I pulled into the Ralph's Market, and there was a line of people. And somebody said, "Hey, what kind of car is that, 50 Plymouth?" And this old guy goes, "Oh, God, my mom had one of those things." And then I saw this young couple, and the girl came over, and she said, "This is so much cooler than a minivan." And then the 20-something-year-old guy with her said, "What's a Plymouth?" Well, the old guy thought that was the funniest thing he ever heard. And it was just started a conversation. And it was just kind of fun to see where old cars take you and the journey they bring you on, I mean, there was something sort of unthreatening and nice and quiet. You got a pandemic going on. People are worried. And this green station wagon from another era when none of that stuff existed comes rolling into view. It just seems to put people in a good mood.
I mean, that's really what when we see you in action at these car events, I think for someone so famous and such a celebrity, you are a connecting dot from that world to this one for most people. But every time we see you, if we were at Audrain last year or we were at Pebble Beach, the downside of celebrity is the fact that everybody wants to talk to you the whole time, Jay, don't they? They all want a piece of you, and they come up, and you're very gracious. Now, as you're walking around the warehouse there with no one coming up to you, does it make you appreciate the amazing passion that people have to hear your stories?
No, I like to, hey, I could have been OJ. So please,
yeah,
believe me, the people and the fans are why you're able to enjoy this hobby the way we do. I mean, I don't understand people going to show. You don't like people, don't go into showbiz. And the fun thing is, I love to talk cars anyway. So when I get a lot of people go, look, I don't really watch your show and much about you, but I like your car. Oh, perfect. This is the guy. Perfect. I don't want to meet a guy whose uncle plays the spoons and wants to I love talking to guys. I went to a car show in Wisconsin. I was doing a show somewhere at a casino, and there was just the kind of car show I like, one of those Father's Day kind of car shows, but it wasn't Father's Day. There was a bunch of guys, mostly blue collar, and they had the brats cooking on the grill and they're drinking beer. And they're all talking about the car they're going to finish. And some of these guys have married 20 years, and they still had their car from high school in the garage. And as soon as the kids are out of college, they're going to finish that thing and put the big block in it. And, just that. And it was just a fun day, There was nothing fancy at this car show. They asked me to pick my favorite car, and my favorite car at that show was a 66 Pontiac Tempest overhead cam, 6-cylinder sport model. That was a Sprint. And it was sort of a poor man's GTO. It had the 6, but it had a quadrajet 4-barrel that had headers on it. It was putting out maybe 230 horsepower. It was a 4-speed. And it was just something down home about it that I liked. I mean, everybody there was thrilled to see everybody else's car. There probably wasn't a car there worth more than maybe $50,000, probably something like that. So it wasn't some big fancy thing with Lamborghini slides. It was just regular guys and women, just with the cars they grew up in, or they got married in, or their dad took them to church, or whatever it might be. And those are the kind of events I go.
Yeah. Well, I've got some questions here because
Yep.
we're on the less runway ahead than behind.
Yes.
More runway behind than ahead. Jay, this is from Clubber for Life, obviously one of your big fans.
Of course, Clubber, sure.
Yeah, Clubber for Life on Instagram. Jay, what's the car that's
Clubber's doing life. He's currently at Walpole State Prison. Well, hang on, the plane going over. Okay. What's Clubber's question?
What's the car that's eluded you over the years that you'd like to have in there?
Oh, the car that has eluded me. Probably a DB5 Aston Martin. I remember as I was coming up through the 80s, DB5s were 25,000. What? A Jag is only 8,000. That's crazy. And then I go, okay, I got 25,000. Then I go back to the Aston. How much did the Aston? 75? It was 25. No, I'm not paying 75. Well, okay. Then I figured, well, maybe it's worth 75. How much did the Aston? 250. 250? I'm not paying 250. So it just eluded me all these years. One of these days I might get one. I mean, to me, it's basically just a Jaguar that went to graduate school. But they're both 6-cylinders. They're both twin cam. I don't know what makes the Aston that much better than the Jag, but there's something interesting about it.
It is a handsome car for sure. Talking about handsome cars,
every person that loves cars can relate to that story.
Totally.
It doesn't matter. And so Jay has a lot of cars. It's done well, but there's just, you get these things, these hang-ups. I'm not paying that.
Ugh. Well, docile Jim Brady may have the most unique question I've ever heard. If a Yugo were hand-built to blueprint specifications, then would it be a quality car?
Well, it was. It was called a Fiat. I mean, no, that's what Yugo was. Yugo was, I think it was a Fiat that was no longer built. It was just outdated. The technology was sold to Yugoslavia, and because Yugoslavia, I believe, was communist at that time. So they bought the tooling for this car that was no longer in production, which was, I think, a 124 Fiat. I'm not quite sure, but that's basically what it was. But yeah, I think that's fair to say.
That's a fun question. Well, Jay, we're going to let you go in a minute, but of course it is your birthday, so we actually have a real cake here, as you can say, decorated by Tommy, so he shoved like 6 Hot Wheels on the top.
There's a Ford GT40, a Rally RS Capri, and a 57 Chevy with flames, Hot Wheels, on your cake.
But of course, everyone vapes now, so there's no lighters in the building. So we can't light it. You can't eat it because you're in our virtual world, but we're not. So we can enjoy your cake. Jay, happy birthday.
Well, thank you, and I'm thrilled that you're eating my cake.
Yeah, it is. Well,
That's the story of my life.
Well, I hope when you get home you have a cake waiting for you. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
We'll see you on the other side. Thank you so much, Jay.
Bye-bye.
Right. You're right. Everybody can relate to the Jay Leno stories.
Well, and the one where he went to the market is kind of what I was talking about with McKeel, where even if you don't identify, and this was from our documentary we did, even if you don't identify as a car person, every one of those people he talked to at the market had something that related to that story. And I say, people say, well, I don't have any cars. I said, what did you drive in high school? Oh, I had this hand-me-down thing, and all my friends made fun of it. Every one of that person's friends remembers that crapo Citation X11 that was handed down that they had to drive. It's all they had.
It's so true. It's well, we are in the last 5 minutes of the show. One of the things that we hope for from the love of cars was bringing in many elements that contribute to the world of travel, the experience of the road trip, and of course the original aspirational brand that almost without doubt contributed to man's wanderlust or satisfied their wanderlust was the Michelin Guide, started by the two brothers in their bicycle shop in France over 100 years ago. And remember what had happened. The automobile was suddenly popular with the upper wealthy class, and they'd set off on these journeys. And
what do you do with these?
Where do you go? Where do you get gas when you get the other end? Of course, in the early days, it was where were the water troughs, which were outside every single inn and tavern because that was for the horses. So actually, steam cars were easier than gasoline. Little tip, but where would you eat? Where would you sleep? And that kicked off the Michelin Guide that really did have such an influential role throughout the last century. Into this one, of course, we ended up with the Michelin Guide restaurants, which was the aspirational rating system for restaurants around the world. The guide has modified, has grown, has evolved, kept up with the times, and certainly their website is incredibly aspirational. But there is a side to it as they're opening up the individual guides for America, and they have them in New York. They have them, I think, in 4 locations. But the big one that was released literally only in the last few months was the California Guide, and this will give you a little bit of sense of flavor for the Michelin Guide. You can see their logo there. It's all about the California life, and they have some absolutely incredible chefs and restaurants in that guide. And we get a bit lazy, don't we?
It's a little bit like the Concours Awards for cars. If you have a Michelin star, and they don't give them out, it's not like everyone gets a trophy. If you have and so we are going to delve into the Michelin Guide and have some of the chefs on our show in the coming weeks.
Yeah, very exciting.
That happen to intersect with the car world.
Yeah.
And so we're going to have them on. I mean, it's a great time. That's all we have to do. Dreaming your next road trip. And maybe it's culinary based. I'm going to make a trip to Aquavit in New York and sample the Michelin star food.
Unfortunately, in the absence of my dad's shiny red Porsche, I just sit and I polish Betty, the 1972 vintage Airstream behind us. But yes, with 32 editions worldwide, this is going to be a great collaboration, and the Michelin Guide are going to be great partners in this. So look forward to that next week. We have a little bit of business before we close out the show. McKeel mentioned it. They're getting more in the racing space, and Hagerty are actually getting involved as sponsor of our favorite online racing series. Did you know that?
The IMSA, iRacing IMSA
Pro Series. There must be a reason it's called a series, not a championship.
Talk about intersecting. Next Thursday is the next round from Mid-Ohio.
2 days time.
Oh, this Thursday.
You better be
2
here
days.
as I'm on my own.
This Thursday.
Yeah.
And the big question on everyone's mind is, can anyone stop Bruno Spengler? He's won both races so far, although Shane Van Gisbergen was closing. And it was amazing. We did our show, our pre-race show for the last race at Laguna Seca, WeatherTech Raceway, Laguna Seca. And I was driving home, and I had it on my phone, and I was listening through my AirPods. The race sounded so good, I pulled over, and I literally sat for 40 minutes because Van Gisbergen was on newer tires and was eating into the lead of Spengler. And there was a couple spectacular wrecks. John Hindhaugh in the ears. It was exciting. I don't know if you had the same experience, but it really, I'm looking forward to going back to the big one, the real races. But that one totally drew me in, and so I know, obviously, Jack Hawksworth. I watched him do a little prep.
He's getting faster.
He's getting faster. He's the guy that has won. He won it last year at Laguna Seca, putting Lexus in victory lane for the first time.
And of course, we all want to know what is the future of iRacing. We all want to know the technology behind it. We're going to do a segment on iRacing on our next show coming up. We're going to get some of the builders of those simulators on the show. But Hagerty's sponsoring the IMSA series, iRacing series, on Thursday night. And actually, at the weekend, you can check it out on Hagerty's live stream channel. They've got John Hindhaugh, Jack Roush
Jr., Patrick Long,
and they're going to discuss what is the future of iRacing.
Is it here to stay? Is it a flash in the pan? What is the future of iRacing?
Well, our future is that we will be back next Tuesday with some incredible guests. We're going to kick it off with one of the most incredible builders in the car industry. Local boy to us. Rod Emery is one of the coolest guys. My teammate at the historic Daytona 24 Hours, I may add, in a 924. They wouldn't let him in the 962, but maybe next year.
But
Rod.
Talk about building your life around your passion. He's been doing it since he was a kid, much like McKeel, and so we're going to hear from legendary builder of the Emery Outlaws, Rod Emery, and also Courtney Hansen.
Courtney Hansen,
yes, will be joining us.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that.
Second generation. I know you're looking forward to it, but a big racing connection as well. Her father, Jerry Hansen, legendary. The most national championships, SEC national championships by a single driver, Jerry Hansen.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yep.
Okay. And we are also going to bring on the first of our Michelin Guide celebrity chefs, Gary Mins, from in Los Angeles. He has the most extraordinary, very small, intimate restaurant.
Is he old enough? How old is he?
He's young and talented and loves cars. So he's our kind of guy. Thank you so much for watching. See us in 2 days' time for the IMSA pre-race show live on the talk show. And we'll be back with The Love of Cars presented by Hagerty next Tuesday.
When the road calls, we answer with our guaranteed value, unparalleled service and expertise, and savings of $264 on average. Hagerty has you covered no matter what's around the bend. Get a quote today at Hagerty.com.